What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, and as with me as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how's it going, my man? How are you doing after a pretty bad loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I've mellowed through the years, and uh, I don't take losses quite as hard as I used to.
Yeah,
And I'm able to look at things a little more objectively, and just be more realistic and honest with my assessment. So I'm sure we'll get a good bit of that tonight.
100%. I too have mellowed down, but I'm still pretty upset. I had a
Well, I
long
ain't
drive.
happy.
That's true. I went to go visit my pops, and I ended up coming back. It was about 2.5, 3 hour drive home, and it just stinks, after a loss, having to sit there, and then you listen to the press conferences, and it doesn't sound like there's answers that are going to be there. The Steelers, they lost to the Seattle Seahawks 31-17. 2 games in a row. Defense is allowing somewhat over 30 points. I say somewhat because there was a huge mistake by Caleb Johnson that gave 7 points to the Seattle Seahawks in yesterday's game. But I mean, they were running the ball, they were passing all over the defense. This extremely high paid defense that was quoted by, I believe, Mike Tomlin as possibly being historic before the season started. Maybe historically bad at this point. We'll break it down. Let's just start it off. Let's start off on the defense. They're getting paid quite a bit of money. TJ Watt hasn't recorded a stat in a few games if you go back to last year. Any concerns that you have that this is going to continue?
Well, I have concerns up and down the roster. We were talking before the show here started. I think Tomlin's 1-7 in his last 8 games if you count the playoffs, which is historically bad. Which we get a lot of coaches on the hot seat, but at Pittsburgh that doesn't happen. But in the offseason we had talked. I thought there should be a lot of changes with the coaching staff, not particularly Tomlin per se, but with the coordinators and other positions, and not just the player personnel. But obviously they thought the coaching staff was fine. They left it pretty much as is, and they changed a lot of the players. The problem is it looks just like it always has. It's like the so many of the same issues. My first observation, and I feel like you'll agree, is they're too passive on both sides of the ball. They cannot impose their will on offense or defense because they don't have the big dogs up front. You watch teams that are limited, but a lot of times the offensive lineman, let's say, will be one-dimensional. He's the power player who struggles with speed, or he's a speed guy who struggles with power. But you can kind of adapt your system and your scheme to, compensate sometimes. The Steelers, they struggle with both. If it's power or speed, they can't handle it. Communication, a lot of it's because a lot of them didn't play together due to injury, or he just didn't play the starters. But it's just there's so many issues that are reoccurring. And as you say, if you watch the press conferences, you don't really hear any answers. You don't hear any, we're going to try this, or we might try something different, because the stubbornness of this organization is mind-boggling at times. And that we're going to continue to put Keanu Benton at nose tackle, no matter how many times he gets knocked 2-3 yards downfield. We're going to continue to play this guy out of position. Teams are going to focus on DK Metcalf, and the Steelers' solution is that is we just won't throw it to him. And when he does get the ball thrown to him, he's shocked and he's dropping it. So, I mean, it's like there's so many problems, Daniel, that you can't just pick one.
To me, I think the most glaring problem is the predictability of this team. And I think that you have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, enough talent that if they were coached up right, and I hate to say this, but if they were coached up right and, perhaps maybe even had a coach that could it just seems that there's no adjustments with this team, and they have continued to do the same thing over and over and over again. Other teams have
Yep.
called it out, other teams have figured it out, other teams have, and players have spoken about it. I think Julian Edelman has spoken about how some of the same things are the same as when he was a player, which was some time now. And so, the Steelers haven't changed. They've put in new players in positions and think that, oh, well, they're going to do better. And they've brought in a cast of players to you would think that, hey, it wouldn't really matter what you put out there, they're going to be able to do it. But at the end of the day, if the opposition knows what you're doing, knows where the weaknesses are, you're going to get buried alive. And I think that's what we've seen here, both offensively and defensively. I think that, and we'll just stick to the defense for now. It was a very poor performance up front. I mean, even when Wyatt Black was in there at nose tackle, I think it was he took, I think it was like either 7 or 8 snaps. Either way, only one did not result in a successful play for the Seattle Seahawks. I think it was like either they were 6 or 7 or 7 or 8 on successful plays when Wyatt Black was at nose tackle. So, I don't know if it's a scheme thing that, it doesn't matter and teams have figured out how to block it up front. But you had that. There was another play where the fullback pancaked. I don't know if you saw this, but he pancaked Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen on the same
Both
play
of
at
them.
the same time, at the exact same time.
Queen ran right into the back of Wilson, who was getting blocked by the fullback.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, it's too much of like, all right, it's too predictable in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to look at maybe Terrell Austin as a scapegoat, but I don't think this is Terrell Austin's defense. This is all Mike Tomlin, and I think the blame and and all of it should fall short, on his shoulders. There was a 4th and 1 near midfield where he decided to put the defense back on the field, a defense that had been struggling for majority of the game. And it's just decisions aren't the greatest. The challenges have never been the greatest. Player personnel, putting the, drafting Kenny Pickett, some of these other guys that they've drafted. I know a lot of people look at Kevin Colbert. I mean, maybe, I think Kevin Colbert had a huge part in it, but I think also Mike Tomlin had a huge part in building this team. And so, and I think there's something to the loyalty aspect of it. I hate to rant, and I know this was going to be your rant show, but I mean, TJ Watt hasn't done anything for a while, and now the Steelers are on the books for $41 million a year, and it's I'm hoping it can turn around, but I think he's only had 7 sacks in the last 16 games.
I couldn't agree more. When I said when he was at the height of his, before this had started, this downward trend, I said, why you can, rethink this extension, and what is the value? I mean, we just seen the Cowboys and the Packers trade Micah Parsons, and teams trying to get back relevant. The Packers are looking like the real deal now. You look at the Steelers, you can't say they look like the real deal. Part of the problem is we start caring more about what's on the back of the jersey than what's on the front. And it's great to have so many Steelers, the all-time great Steelers that retired Steelers. But the problem is it's just not the modern day NFL. And is Hayward been an impact player this year? I mean, he tipped the ball. Yes, and it got intercepted by Herbig. But is that's been the only thing I've seen. Watt is doing his job. He's not doing anything spectacular, and that's what they're paying him for. They're paying for the Watt of old. Now they're getting, they do run away from him. They do double him. All that's still true. But the problem is they're the highest paid defense in the league, and they look like, that they're going to be a bottom 10 defense in the league if something doesn't change quickly. And I think we're putting a lot of pressure on Harmon getting back. Can one rookie defensive lineman make that much difference when there's problems right now on all three levels. We got so much money invested in the defense that you needed to carry the team for a while till the offense gets up to speed, right? Well, they're not carrying anything. If anything, they're not even carrying their end. And it's just they're at a crossroads right now. This is either going to get better really fast or it's going to snowball. And I don't know right now which one it's going to be.
I know you mentioned that he gets double team and triple team. I understand that. And some might say, well, he does some other things good against the run. I mean, Steelers have been killed through the run in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett gets paid quite a bit too. I'm pretty sure he gets double team and triple team, but he's able to put some stats on the stat sheet. Don't change the goalpost. Before this year, and before last year, everybody used to say that Myles Garrett was not as good as TJ Watt because we would take the stats, we would take the sacks, we would take the actual performance on the field versus the pressure. So as Steeler fans, we shouldn't change the goalpost and say, oh, you know what? Never mind. He's getting double team, triple team. So are these other guys. And he's getting paid, and he got paid this year specifically higher than Myles Garrett. So he should outperform Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett
isn't on hit that Garrett hit Burrows last week?
I did.
The reason I bring it up, because if you watch the play, it was a stunt that Garrett loops around, comes straight up the middle, and almost decleats Burrow.
Yeah.
When have you seen Watt loop around? When have you seen Watt come from the other side? When have you seen stunts? It's just like the same thing over and over and over. So they just avoid that side of the field. Most teams avoid it altogether, even with the run. And it limits what he does. He can't, like on the one sack by Sawyer yesterday, Watt goes out wide, took two guys with him, and Sawyer didn't get touched. At least use him as a decoy, get some kind of advantage. But but the right side has been or left side in this case, has been so weak that they're just like, well, all we got to do is run to that side. You notice the Frank Walker on that last back-breaking touchdown run from it was 3rd and 19 or something?
3rd and goal from the 20.
3rd and goal from the 19, yeah. That's the first time in NFL history that a player scored that far out on 3rd down in the red zone, and he was basically untouched.
Yeah.
I mean, that just goes to show you that there's so many issues with this team right now.
Mm-hmm.
That you sit and you're like, well, if it changes, there's just so many things going on right now. I don't have any answers.
No, I don't think the Steelers do at this point either. I mean, it's just been consistently bad defense, allowing anybody, that has any agility to go out there and embarrass them on the ground. I mean, look at the New York Jets. They end up getting the break speed off of them by the Buffalo Bills this weekend. Mm-hmm. Everybody was looking at their offense thinking maybe their offense was going to be something special. They didn't do anything this week. Seattle Seahawks didn't do anything last week, offensively. And so, what are we going to see when the Steelers go up against teams like the Buffalo Bills a little bit later that are a prolific offense, or even the Baltimore Ravens that are putting up 30 points a game as well on other defenses that seem to be humming on all cylinders. To me, it spells a very long season right now. And my thing is, I don't foresee them ever, even with it being a bad season, I don't think they're going to make any changes. It's going to be status quo until status quo wants to leave.
Well, I agree. And when a lot of teams, I think, listen to the fan base to a point. But I think the Steelers ownership is guilty of this. And that you get some people, man, it's like sacrilegious to say, well, they should have traded Watt, or they should have called Hayward's bluff. They should have, because these are the all-time greats. No, all-time greats are not 1-7, 1-8. Never won a playoff game. These are not all-time greats. These are good players for this era, this time of. But again, what has it done for the Steeler team? Would you rather just have an all-time great player, let's say like Watt, and you have him for 12 years, and he retires, he goes in the Hall of Fame, and he never won a playoff game? Is that what we're actually after? Is that success? Is that we can wear around a jersey with a guy's name on the back? Or is it the name on the front that matters most and the success of the franchise? Because I think that the Rooney's still want to hold on to this, because every time we've said, well, you might ought to consider calling the bluff, trading the guy or whatever, you're not real fan. You're, go root for one of these other teams, and they don't have a Watt, they don't have a Hayward. And yeah, but we're seeing teams now that are starting to turn around. I don't know if anybody watched the Atlanta game last night. Atlanta's went with a young quarterback. They've made a lot of changes, and you're starting to see them build something. The Packers look like they could really be something special with the move they made with Parsons. But the Steelers ain't even close right now. They're not even close. You can put 5 more guys on this team. And I don't know if because schematically, it's not modern day NFL. It's not aggressive enough. It doesn't create enough mismatches on offense or defense. Like Minnesota last night was blitzing the heck out of Atlanta. Now, they had a lot of success. They ended up losing the game. But they didn't quit. That's their nature. That's who they are. That's more the modern game. And the Steelers just don't do that.
No, they don't. And, when you become a little bit too loyal, I mean, this is kind of what happens. You end up paying players, and not saying TJ Watt's going to have a bad year. This is just week 2. There's a good possibility he turns it around and he can change things. My doubts aren't necessarily his physical attributes and his abilities. It's the scheme that he's, a part of. And it seems like the offenses in the NFL have now figured out how to play against the Steelers defense.
Definitely.
And, you can be as good and have all these great attributes. I mean, you're going to do good in the preseason because that's when scheme doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But once it comes into the mental aspect of the game, this is where the Steelers, in my opinion, are falling short. And I think that preparation, I think they've mentioned it a few times, last week, again, this week in the post game and
they talk about conferences. Different guys. Fitzpatrick talked about it last year. Now, it was, who was it yesterday after the game? Was it Queen? Or maybe Queen was last, but everybody, there's different guys all the time talking about preparation and practice habits. Yeah. I mean, good gosh, if you can't get it right, but now that's a coaching problem.
It is a coaching problem. They're the ones that do the scouting and get the players prepared. I called it before the season started when we looked at the schedule. I thought this was going to be a very difficult game for the Steelers. Why? Because this was a team that the Steelers weren't used to or accustomed to. They don't play them very often. You had a new head coach. You had a new coordinator, quarterback. And I knew that was some of the same things that they were going to see against the Jets in week 1. But I didn't think that the Jets had a roster that could compete to the same level as the Seahawks. So I actually called that this game was going to be a loss. But the reason behind it is because, in my opinion, Tomlin has never done well when there's been a change of quarterback in the, towards the later end of the week and adjustments need to be made. Or if there's a quarterback that comes in the middle of the game, they often have success against the Steelers defense. And it's because, in my opinion, the Steelers want to play that quarterback as if they're, the quarterback that just left, the game plan doesn't change, and not accounting that the opposition is realizing that the quarterback they have may have some other strengths and probably a lot more weaknesses and need to cover up those with doing some things that are different. And that catches the team off guard, and they're not prepared for those things. And it's so frustrating to have to deal with that over and over again. But it is that's one of the reasons why I thought that this game wasn't going to go well. I think the Steelers will probably have a better showing next week because, that's not a new quarterback. He has some film under him and things of that nature. But, if you can't prepare for a team like this in these situations, I think you're just kind of relying on former success at this point.
Well, I don't know how many times I've heard him say, it's not about who we're playing, it's about us. We have to execute. We have to, utilize our game plan and have success. And no, it does matter. The other team who's playing matters. Like if they've got two secondary corners out, you attack those corners.
Yeah.
And if you even if it ain't, Metcalf and they put their best remaining corner on Metcalf, you can't just totally go away from him. You have Ramsey out there; they still burned Ramsey. You've had Joey Porter out there, and they'll still go after Porter. But we act like, okay, if this guy's on the field, we can't throw down the middle because I remember in the Atlanta game last year, Simmons was the safety, and they said we couldn't throw down the middle or deep because Simmons was down there. I mean, sometimes you got to impose your will, and you got to be willing to take chances. Now, sometimes the chances work out, sometimes they don't. The Steelers got 2 turnovers on Darnold. One of them was definitely his fault, and the other one, the ball was tipped, like we said. But they didn't shut him down and not let him throw anymore. They stuck with their game plan. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but Frank Walker was being interviewed by the Seattle media. And he was like, it was just like, all I had to do was run. The holes were just opening up. And we knew if we went to that side, there was going to be massive holes. And he said, I just kept running, breaking tackles and stuff because, they didn't tackle well either. So it was just an all-around failure.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, this team is a team that, like I said, was supposed to be historic. They had some injuries. Alex Highsmith goes down again. He's going to be out for several weeks. I think he's an excellent player. And I think when he's on the field and he's healthy, he has a good repertoire of defensive moves. And I think he can really, create some havoc on his side of the field. I think he's good against run support. But, man, availability being a big part of one of the being your best ability or supposedly, he's kind of lacking there. He's become a little bit injury prone in my opinion. I think that the Steelers have only had a handful of games where Nick Herbig, TJ Watt, and Alex Highsmith were healthy for the entire game. What do you think is the answer here?
Well, we kind of talked about it in the offseason. Alex Highsmith, matter of fact, I love the kid. I think he's a great young man off the field and an excellent player when healthy. The problem is this is the guy that built himself. He built his body into an NFL caliber edge player. When he was a walk-on at UNC Charlotte. And so this is a guy that just maxed out his abilities in every area and his physique and everything. Those guys, like I've said before, Myles Garrett is a freak of nature. If you don't believe me, watch him do a box jump sometime. I mean, the guy's a freak. So he could go 80, 90%, and he could still dominate most normal men. And therefore, he doesn't get injured. A guy like TJ Watt has to go 110 to be successful, especially the way teams are scheming for him. He's more apt to get injured. Alex Highsmith, he does some great spin moves and he's worked on his craft and honed his body. But those guys are always pushing 110. They get more of these injuries, especially soft tissue and sprains and stuff. And there's nothing he can do about it. He's playing hard, but when you play that way, I tell you something I have noticed, and tell me if I'm wrong, and hope everybody's paid attention. But if you watch the teams that are real aggressive on both sides of the ball, like I said, defense it's always attacking, and they're real aggressive, they have less injuries. But if you're back absorbing the energy and the aggression, it's coming towards you, and you're absorbing it, trying to block. If you ever watch, those teams have more injuries. They get taken out by friendly fire. A guy gets knocked into the back of one of your legs. And you're not being aggressive. You're not moving forward. You're not attacking. I always have felt when the Steelers were real aggressive, say as a defense in the 90s with Woodsburg and everything, they suffered fewer of these type injuries.
Yeah, it's got to be something. I mean, these injuries are constantly happening, you know. But the Steelers have also taken some risks when it comes to players in the draft because of some injury situation. Corey Trice, Peyton Wilson with his knee.
Yep.
I think even Fautanu had some. He dropped because of some injury concerns, which resulted in him missing his entire year last year for the most part. Um, you know, maybe perhaps Steelers are just looking at the talent of these guys and not taking in the whole picture. I have no idea, but it's either that or something crazy is going on in practice or something. Peyton Wilson was apparently throwing up on the field. He was in and out of the lineup with heat issues. I thought they practiced in the heat all summer. What happened? Do you think there's a conditioning issue here?
I don't think necessarily conditioning issue as far as that. I mean, you'll see guys, uh, even at that level of physical conditioning, peak physical conditioning, uh, vomit, in heat,
Yeah.
with the emotions and everything else. First home game as a starter of his career, he might have just been a little amped up, but I wasn't so much worried about that because I've seen some physically fit freaks do that, get little nauseous like that on the field. But I think Pierre did something similar. He was in and out of the game with some heat issues. Um, but yeah, they've changed their trainers, trying to avoid these type of injuries and things. Yeah. But a lot of these injuries happen when your own guy falls into your leg or gets knocked into your legs. And like one time yesterday, they had a blitz coming and Herbig and Wilson ran into each other and missed Arnold. I'm just like, I mean, it was a great call. It was a good blitz. They both executed. The only thing they didn't do was take down the quarterback. They run into each other.
Yeah. I saw in the comment section, and I want to get your opinion before we take the break. The statement was, and I believe it was Boxing Men said that this defense is old, slow, and beat up already. How do you feel about that comment? Do you agree, disagree, and can you add some comments to that?
At this point, that's how they look. I think they're better than they look. I do not like the scheme. I do not like how they're being used. I think they got massive problems on the defensive line. But we remember Ramsey's speed and Slay's speed 5 years ago. Well, it's not the same now. They don't have Porter. They don't have Elliott. There's always excuses. But this team's got to get healthy, and they got to get a better game plan schematically, and it's got to happen fast. Or because right now what he said is accurate.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Hangover. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, stillcurrentnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out. Be a part of the conversation. You can comment in the right underneath the articles. And then while you're there, you can check out the audio-only podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're missing quite a bit of content, which would include my show, State of the Steelers, that airs out on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure you go and check that. I was wrong quite a bit on some things. I should have stuck with my original thought earlier in the season. I probably would have been right, but I thought the Steelers were going to win. I thought they were going to have a bounce back game. And unfortunately it wasn't the case offensively. Now let's get into it there, Shannon. Aaron Rodgers, 18 of 33, 203 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Probably should have been 3. He looked a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? Spry, maybe
Yeah,
perhaps in his
he moved
movement.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
But almost three. He should have had three interceptions. I mean,
Mhm.
I do understand that one of the interceptions it bounced off of Calvin Austin's hands. Probably should have still only been two, but that was the one that was dropped was probably the worst one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the quarterback?
I think that you're seeing a competitor, an older competitor who wants to make a play and he wants to get have success and get this ball rolling and uh but he just doesn't have the talent around him right now. I'll just be honest.
Mhm.
The offensive line is drastically underwhelming. They have disappointed me big time. I expected much more. I'll just be honest because the guys that I thought had decent games, Faatanu and Frazier, uh, in the week one yesterday, I don't think anybody was up to par anywhere across the offensive line. Seattle generated tons of pressure up the middle. Uh, the guards did not look good at all. Broderick Jones actually, I graded out a little bit better than Faatanu.
Mhm.
Faatanu had a lot of struggles yesterday. And Jones, if everybody else would have played like they did the week prior, and Jones would have his performance would have came up some, like it did, the Steelers would have been pretty good. But everybody dropped off yesterday. I think Seattle's got a better front. Big G had said on the Pub Your Breaks last week that Seattle had a better front than New York. And I thought that they were prepared for Seattle. I was wrong, desperately wrong.
Yeah.
Uh, Rodgers at his age, just like I said about being his last year, he had to have the line in front of him. He had to have a running game. Well, the running game, Warren was really effective at times.
Mhm.
Um, but and he had some big catches. That one play, that catch and run was beautiful.
Mhm.
And we're going to have to lean more on Warren as the year goes on. But Warren is going to be drastically limited by the offensive line. And then if you're going to say, well, every team's going to have their number one cornerback follow Metcalf around, if that's the case, Steelers just won't throw to him, obviously. And then that means the rest of the guys I don't think are up to snuff. To be the guy, if you're going to have to
Right.
carry them that week.
The only problem with that is that DK Metcalf didn't have their number one cornerback on him. He was out. Witherspoon was out the entire
Yeah,
game.
but I mean, they had Job. Is his name
Right.
Joby or Job or?
Right. But
Yeah, I
still,
mean,
I
he was the
mean,
best guy they had left.
right. No,
Is
and
what
I
I'm
agree
saying. I
with
think
that.
he's
But I
their
mean,
number
if they
two.
had their
Yeah.
top guy on the field, it would have
No,
been even worse.
Witherspoon didn't even play. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
neither did Emanuela, the rookie
Mm-hmm.
safety that I really liked coming out. So, no, I agree. I mean, but what I mean is the way they're calling the offense is like, if anybody's gone Metcalf, we're not going to throw it to him. And then they try these crossers and stuff, and he's dropping it.
Yep.
Because he has no rhythm. He has no confidence that he's going to get the ball. I don't think it's a lack of effort with him. I just think it's concentration, trying to make a big play before he catches the ball. But no, I think if Rodgers could be okay, but is the line going to get better all of a sudden? Is I don't think they got to go out and get a number two wide receiver, but they do definitely got to improve their offensive line performances and production.
Yeah. Yeah. With DK, he's always had a little bit of the drops here and there.
Yeah.
Even in Seattle. And so that was one of the things that I was kind of like, when people would say, hey, are you better or worse with DK than George? And I'm like, well, George, I think, has more reliable hands. I just think that DK is more reliable effort. And that's kind of where the two intersect. Is like, all right, what's more important? I'll
take
think the
Metcalf.
Steelers. Yeah, I
I'll
will
take
too.
Metcalf.
I'll take
I'll be
Metcalf
honest.
as well. but
you got
I
to
was just
throw it
saying,
to him. They
I
avoid
agree.
him like the play because he's got coverage or they got a safety over the top. Well, you see what he could do if you get the ball up to him.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That's how they threw it to Pickens. He didn't get separation. They just threw it and he went and got it.
No, I agree. But Pickens has the the combat catching ability and stuff. Metcalf has to catch the ball when it's hitting him in the hands. That's just the ends of that one. But as for Rodgers, to me, it felt like he was moving a little bit better, but I also felt like he was looking at the line a little bit faster, which I don't blame him. After the last game, he was getting a little, quite a bit of pressure up the middle,
Mhm.
right in his face. He's 41 years old, so he's going to look at the line if the line isn't going to be doing their what they need to do. And if he's taking his eyes off of the field, I mean, that's just not going to be conducive to a good offensive game plan. But it starts off up front. They have to give him protection. They have to give him confidence that he can look down the field, look at his second, third read, and make a throw confidently without being hit from some form of direction. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, the interceptions, one of them, I don't know if it was really his fault, but the other two, that one that should have, and the other one, they weren't pretty. He should have had one, I think, last week as well, but that was dropped out of the hands of the cornerback. I'm hoping this is just him knocking off some of that rust from not playing at all throughout the preseason.
Yep.
That is a thing.
Oh, definitely.
You can look at some of these other teams that have done it in the past, didn't play their players, and they've kind of changed their philosophy. One of them being the Bengals. They hadn't played Joe Burrow in the preseason for like 2 years or so, and this year they did because every year their offenses come out kind of shaky, and now he's gone for the next 3 months, which he's a guy that's had a lot of major injuries that have sidelined him for a huge part of the year, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he don't have an offensive line either. So it starts up front. What do you think is the solution here? I mean, outside of I don't know if the Steelers want to make any moves. Like you said, Broderick Jones was playing a little bit better this week. Do you think the only move to make is Pat Meyer? What do you think is the answer?
Well, changing an offensive line coach at this point, I thought it should have been done in the offseason. Same thing with defensive coordinator. But again, as you say, I think it's Tomlin's defense. I don't think it's Austin's defense at all.
Yeah.
But to me, this is a group effort. They've sucked as a group, and now they're going to have to dig themselves out as a group. And, I thought they would have a slow start. But where they didn't play so many guys at all in the preseason. Right. Well, they pulled out a victory last week. Well, it didn't work this week. Now, they would have still had a chance that last drive or two had it not been for the, I don't know how that keeps happening to the Steelers. That everybody knows the kickoff's a live ball. You got to field it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you have to field it. You have to. I mean, it never has changed. They said it's the new kickoff rule. No, it ain't. It's always been that way. When the ball is kicked or kickoff, you have to field it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it goes out of bounds, but you can't just watch it and say, oops, well, no, it's not a punt. This is a kickoff. And Barry Foster, a lot of the younger viewers is not going to remember. But Barry Foster's did that before he had his great season. But when he was a rookie, I think he was still a rookie, he let a kickoff. He didn't field it, and the 49ers picked it up in San Francisco and scored a touchdown. Brian Shazier, remember the free kick in 2019? It was a safety, and they had to free kick it.
Oh, yeah.
And he thought it was just like a punt, and he didn't field it. It's just like a kickoff. You have to field it. Yeah. Well, I can't remember who it was they were playing. Anyway, they lost that game. Well, guess what? That happened again. And I don't know how he could. I've seen it happen to other teams maybe once or twice through all the years I've watched football. It's happened to the Steelers 3 times. Now, do we have to get Danny Smith and a big thing of bubble gum and set him in a room and say, all right, boys, this is what we have to do? And it shouldn't just be on the kick returners. Everybody on that return unit needs to know, field the ball. You have to field the ball.
I mean, at one point, is that supposed to be common knowledge at this part of the profession? I mean, at this part of their career, it's kind of like, do they have to teach the offensive line not to false start, or is that something that is taught in Pee Wee football and that is carried on throughout the entire, throughout?
Yeah, but that happens all the time, every game. Whereas,
no, I understand.
Kickoff, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but a lot of these guys, I mean, Caleb Johnson is not a natural kick returner. I do not like him as a kick returner.
Mhm.
He's looking for the blocking like he's on an outside zone. Well, it's not the same. You're not going to get that same kind of blocking. And he just runs right into the tackles. He don't have any elusiveness that way.
Right.
So why he's being a kick returner, I don't know. But obviously he's pretty new to it. And anybody that's done any kick returning knows you have to field a kickoff because it's a live ball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been a lot of bonehead mistakes over the years on special teams too. I mean, I was talking to my father when that happened, and he reminded me of the Gunnar Olszewski toe tap.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
I was at that game, and everybody's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing toe tapping at the on a kickoff?" I mean, the Steelers got it at the 40. I think they got it at the 8 or something like that, and it was ridiculous. But yeah, do you think we'll see Caleb Johnson this upcoming game against the Patriots in any capacity, whether it's kick return or on the offense?
I didn't know if he was ready or not. Now I definitely don't think he's ready.
Yeah.
He does not need to be on kick returns. I do know that. And I don't want to see Warren back there because I don't want to see Warren get hurt on a freaking kickoff return.
Mm-hmm.
But that's who they replaced him with, if I ain't mistaken, was Warren. I just don't want to put Warren at risk because he's your best running back.
Mm-hmm.
So put Gainwell back there and somebody else. It's not that hard to either field it or down it. Even if he would have just, because like you said, he was trying to field that thing, and they kept saying, "Oh, did it touch him?" Well, I couldn't tell for sure. I don't think it did. But it kept super close. But what I'm saying is he's not even natural with that because you can tell he had no chance of catching that ball.
No, none whatsoever.
But I don't know what they're going to do. But I think that now he's shook to the point that it's going to hurt his development right now. I don't think he's ready to take handoffs. Imagine if he was to fumble, Daniel. Say he gets 2 or 3 carries and fumbles, he'll be in the Tomlin doghouse and never get out this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Somewhere out there, Cordell Patterson was laughing, though. I know that for a fact.
Why? He was eating a bucket of chicken.
While he was eating the chicken. He's like, I would have known to cover that punt.
Yes. With the hands and all.
There you go. There you go. Cordell Patterson. Name anything we would be talking about in the season.
Wishing he was back. Oh, he didn't.
Right. No, I don't know about that. But I mean, it's been disappointing so far. And I've seen some people say this in the comment section, and I guess we do need to bring it up. What do you think about Omar Khan and his drafting ability? You have Broderick Jones, who is not a fan favorite at this time. You have Caleb Johnson, who's been a struggle. Derek Harmon hasn't seen the field due to injury. Feltanu got injured last year and missed his entire first season as well, for the most part. I think free agency wise, he's done some pretty good things. But what do you think about the draft so far and how they've panned out to this point?
Well, you could draft great, but if you don't have the coaching staff to develop those picks, if you don't have the coaching staff to implement schemes that fit and help these young men maximize their skill set and their talents, it isn't on Khan. It isn't on Waddle, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. He got value. He took chances to get value, like with Fontana, who they had the knee concerns. Peyton Wilson, there was knee concerns. Darnell Washington, there was knee concerns. So he got some guys that were, I think, more talented than their draft position. Yeah. But I don't have an issue with Khan as much as I have with the ownership insisting on paying guys for what they have produced in the past, even if it didn't include playoff success of any type, any sort. I have issue with that. I have issue with sticking with the coaching staff, especially positional and coordinators, that whether they even fit the talent that they're bringing in, but their schemes are, as you say, I think the message has grown stale. I've seen it mentioned in the
Mhm.
comments, and I agree. I think eventually the same voice, they're hearing it, again and again. And I think people don't realize that message can go stale. And then the rest of the league's like, well, we know what's coming. We know what to expect with this team, and they can easily defend it
Yeah.
or easily scheme to attack it. So I think there's multiple problems, but I do not think, I'm not ready to say Khan is one of them.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely one issue, and I do want to get into Arthur Smith because I've not been impressed with Arthur Smith. He so Claude Bishop comes in with $5 saying, "Why is Aaron Rodgers passing with seconds left in the first half, up by a touchdown, unnecessary hits on that old body?" Um, the scheme to me, it wasn't even just that. I mean, it was the running on long downs. It's the personnel aspect that's followed Arthur Smith a little bit. A lot of people questioned why he didn't use Bijan Robinson as much or Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Pitts in
Yep.
Atlanta and things of that nature. And there's some of that questions coming up here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, where in my opinion, I get it. You want fresh bodies, but I think you also ruin rhythm and chemistry and maybe two players like the quarterback and a specific player, whether it's Jonnu Smith or Pat Fryermuth or one of the other wide receivers. If he's getting like on the same page and comfortable and you're not allowing that to develop because they're like, oh, he did something good. All right, let's take him out. And let's put in somebody else. Oh, Pat Fryermuth just caught a third down pass. All right, let's go put in Jonnu Smith and and it doesn't allow to build that chemistry and rhythm. And I'll be honest, the play calls have been it don't seem like anybody's open by design or anything like that. It's more like, hey, you need to beat people instead of we'll see some of these offenses where by design they'll design persons or receivers or running backs open. There are concepts that work in those manners, and it just seems like there's a lack of imagination with this offense at this point. What do you think about Arthur Smith so far in the way he's called the offensive plays?
I thought that last week against the Jets, there was some creativity there. Even if they did use the same play basically to score 2 touchdowns to 2 different receivers, but it was something we hadn't seen in the past. And you've got a quarterback with accuracy. I think it's an old-fashioned style, as we know. That's what Mike Tomlin wanted. That's what Arthur Smith brings. Now, it will work if you have a solid offensive line. I'm going to keep beating this dead horse, but until the offensive line plays functional football, David, I mean, the Steelers got the highest paid defense in the NFL. They got all pros in T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward. They got Patrick Queen. They've got guys who've been Pro Bowls, all pros, all over the place. But you watch, there's times they're not generating any pressure without blitzing or sending added pressure, and then they give up big plays. But you watch the Steelers, even if they give him a little bit of protection, which is very seldom, they're not having hardly anybody get open. Because, I don't think that he's scheming guys open, which we said that last year. It's been a while since the Steelers have been able to do that and had an offensive coordinator capable of that. But so now you've got a situation, you got an offensive line that can't give your old quarterback enough time, and you have skill position guys who can't just win one-on-one situations. That's not a good combination.
Not at all. What about the personnel? What do you think about the constant moving around? I mean, you got Kenneth Gainwell again playing a significant role there on the offense, especially when Jalen Warren. I mean, it appeared he did a lot better. Stats don't really point to that. I think he had like a 3.4 average, but he had some explosive runs. Something that the Steelers just weren't seeing out of Kenneth Gainwell yet. They continually went to that rotation. What do you think about about that? Do you think that's a hindrance to this team? Do you think they need to switch that up, or do you think it's what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I believe that right now, like I said last year, I thought that Warren was like one of the only, him and Pickens was the only two explosive offensive weapons the Steelers had. Guys that I'm not saying just get a first down catch. I'm talking about who can make a big play like Warren did
Yeah.
when he caught that ball and he rumbled for whatever it was, 50-some yards, 62 yards, whatever. That was all Warren. I mean, that was just effort. That was just talent. I mean, the Steelers don't have a lot of that. You get the ball in the hands of a Metcalf, and he can make something happen if he catches it. Get the ball to Warren, give him a little bit of blocking, he can make something happen. Right now, Gainwell is not meshing with this offense. So I think you need to see less Gainwell and more Warren because anybody's going to struggle to run behind this line the way it's blocking right now. But we've seen Warren make something out of nothing more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, they desperately need that on the field.
I agree. Transitioning to the wide receiver position, DK had a few drops. I think Calvin Austin only had one catch. He ended up having almost caught a touchdown pass and deflecting the ball up and causing an interception.
Yeah.
Do you think the Steelers need to make some phone calls about wide receiver 2 yet?
I just think they got so many issues that I think it's easy to say that wide receiver, 2 is an option, and what are you willing to give up? Like if you bring in a Tyreek Hill, now I'm not talking about the personality part. I'm not talking about what kind of problems it might cause in the locker room. I can't answer that. I don't think we have the coaching staff to handle that. I'll be honest. Some teams take on problem children, and they can keep them in line long enough to have success. Tomlin did a lot with AB, as we know. I don't think Bell was a personality problem. He just got greedy.
Yeah.
But I don't think he was a problem in the locker room. AB was. And we found out later that Tomlin hid a lot of that. But you also had a veteran superstar quarterback. You had guys that tried to help keep him in line. And until it just all fell apart. And Ben, Ben couldn't even handle that situation. But right now, I don't know if they could handle Tyreek Hill. But if they could get another explosive guy to help take some of the pressure off of Metcalf and off of Warren, that might help on the offensive side of the ball. But this team, I don't think there's an easy fix out there. I don't know if just bringing in one guy. It can't just be another random wide receiver too.
Mm-hmm.
If they're really going to help this team and maximize the potential this team has for this season, it would be great to get a guy like Tyreek Hill, but that doesn't address the offensive line problems.
No, it doesn't. And the offensive line needs to get better. They need to gel up. To me, this upcoming game against the Patriots is huge. It's a huge game. I think the Steelers are at a point where I know a lot of these players weren't here or were part of the team last year, but this has been a significant amount of games where the defense has been a letdown. And if they don't go into Gillette Stadium and start to change things around, there's some personalities on this team. And one of the things that I think everybody was kind of worried about was, yeah, sure, they could probably all coexist when the team is winning, but to go through some adversity early on in the season is going to be interesting to see how they handle it, because you got some guys who have some personalities that might end up displaying some anger or distrust or whatever the case may be. And so to me, I think this game is a huge game that's coming up. They need to turn it around, and they need to turn it around quick, because after this one, they're going on an international trip to Ireland, and then they got the bye week after that. But it can really implode very early.
Daniel, I want to say one thing that goes in line with what you just said, and I want you to continue to elaborate. The Steelers in their last 10 games The defense has given up over 300 yards, which is the longest streak in the NFL, and they're averaging giving up 28 points a game. That's by far both of the worst in the league. They're leading, the longest streak of giving up over 300 yards. So that just, finished your thought. But I just wanted to say what you're saying is absolutely dead accurate. Is that this defense, this is not just this year problem. This is reoccurring, and this is just a continuation.
It definitely is, and I think there's a boiling point with the fan base at this point. I think it's a good thing, especially if the Steelers don't fix some of these problems, that they don't have another home game until October, an actual home game in Pittsburgh in Acrisure Stadium until October, because if they were to go into if that Vikings game was in Pittsburgh and they had another stinker against the Patriots and they started to stink it up against the Vikings, we've all heard the fire Matt Canada chants. The fan base is getting to a point where they're going to start getting vocal. In fact, they were booing pretty loudly when the Steelers decided to punt on 4th and 1.
Yes.
And so it's already starting to happen. I think people have gotten, you say that the message has gone stale. It's gone stale with the fan base at this point. Too many raising hell in Decembers and not coming through. Historic defenses, too much of these empty promises that have turned into just kind of the same old. And
hey, we're going to change. Yeah, there's going to be changes. And then they cut a guy off the practice squad. I mean, it's all these big talk, but you don't see any action.
It's true. It's true. And, it's just put this team in a position where if we're going to be bad, I mean, hell, let's be bad and let's get a top 10 draft pick. You know what I mean? But this drafting in the 15 to 21 every year constantly, one and done in the playoffs. I saw an interesting stat that if Mike Tomlin loses another playoff game, I think he ties Marvin Lewis for the most consecutive playoff losses. I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. Can't argue that. I mean, that's what I'm saying, Daniel. People want to say that, you're not a real fan if you wanted him to trade Watt. I want Watt to have the best career he can have. I like TJ Watt, but I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. And one guy, if you could trade one guy and get the picks, or get talent and where you can use to build and start really rebuilding. I understood what this year is. This year's all in with 1-year contracts, older guys, roll the dice, see what happens, throw it against the wall, see what sticks, take one more shot at trying to have a successful season and win some playoff games for Watt and Hayward and these older guys that's been there. But it just has never happened when they were in their prime and defensive player of the year and Walter Payton Man of the year, all this, that it isn't happening anymore. And I don't know if it'll ever happen with these guys again. And they have to be smart and we're using modern day valuation tactics and capital building, as far as draft picks and what you need for the future. They're doing that with Khan and with Waddle, but holding on to a guy too long, because it's one thing if a guy's won you Super Bowls and you've got this, he's that legacy of a Steeler, but we got two guys that haven't won a playoff game, and we're putting them in the Mount Rushmore of all time Steelers. That ain't right. It just hasn't worked out. It hasn't panned out with team success, and that's what we're all here for. We were the Steelers. If not, we could just don't worry about this. It just wear the name on the back.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I hate to say this, but the Patriots were a team that outside of Brady never kept anybody too long. And I felt like that was a big part of their success, is that they were able to attract players at a reasonable cost, and they didn't keep anybody longer, and they didn't. Those that wanted to stay longer or wanted these big contracts, they got something out of them.
Yeah.
And so, they didn't do the best in drafting either, but because of their success, they had a lot of players that are willing to play on team friendly deals and things of that nature.
Mhm.
And they didn't allow somebody to take too much of the pie, so to speak, so that way they couldn't field a full team, and that's what they had was full teams. And with the Steelers, it's almost like, all right, well, we have the money, let's just spend it, and then not spend it where they need it. I mean, I think one of the probably the person that deserved the pay raise the most didn't get it was Boz, and
Exactly. Exactly.
he's the guy that I think you can depend in and out and think that, hey, in the next few years he's still going to be playing at an all time level. You can't make that same determination with some of these guys that are on the wrong side of 30 already. And
Quarterbacks, the rules are to protect the quarterback.
yeah,
You're paying an offensive line whatever to protect the quarterback. Everything's for the quarterback. Kickers again can play hold his own, because they don't lose that leg, and they actually let them get better. Look at Vinatieri, Adam Vinatieri. He
yeah,
was an all-time great. He played what in his 40s. I
yeah,
mean, Boz has time, but you can afford to pay a guy that's what they in these positions. But as a defensive lineman, a linebacker, as you get older, injuries. It's same thing with running backs. They get over 30, they usually start to deteriorate. It ain't being mean. It's just the way it is. It's the truth.
yeah. No, it definitely is. Well, it was a hard loss. It was a tough one. It sucked, and I hope the Steelers can turn it around. They got a away game in Gillette Stadium, a place that they've not been too successful, but hopefully they can turn it around this upcoming week. What do you got going on the rest of the week there, Shannon?
Well, Wednesday we'll have the Pump Your Brakes at 8 o'clock, which should be quite colorful. It should be quite. We all have very strong opinions about things, and I already know my buddy Big G. I guarantee you, I haven't even seen him or talked to him, and I know he's screaming wide receiver too. Wide receiver too. I know he is, and I ain't even
Yeah,
talked to him. But I'm just saying that. Now, of course, we'll agree on the offensive line sucking and some other things, but yeah, but definitely tune in. It'll get colorful.
there you go. Well, make sure you go check that out on Wednesday. Tomorrow, the Big Brosco show is going to be happening. Make sure you check that out. The preview on Thursday. Friday, I think, is the know-it-alls. And then Saturday, I'm not sure what's on the YouTube side, but State of the Steelers is on the audio-only side on Saturdays. Check out my preview. I think it's probably going to be a little bit different this time around than the last two. It takes me a few weeks to kind of
Yeah.
hone in
Mm-hmm.
on a realistic idea of where the team is, and I think I got an idea now. And so we'll see how accurate I am this upcoming week. I've been a little bit behind the last 2 weeks,
Me too. Yes.
but I think I got it honed in. You guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Shannon, take us out, my man.